what is the persona? And it's a term that Jung coined back in his early days. But it comes from the Greek idea of the mask, where the actors would play different roles, and they would have because you couldn't see their faces, so they would wear these big masks of like a smile or angry, and they would have this mask that they would wear, and then also eventually to cover up their identities and play different roles. And even in the early days, women weren't allowed to perform, so they would have men play women's roles, so they had to wear the costumes to cover it up. But I love it. The idea of the mask is because that's really how we go out into the world, how we live our life. Yeah. So how would you say we develop this persona, or what, the concept of the persona, which is our, he says it's the social uniform, our clothing that we put out, just like we don't go out into the world naked. It's this kind of clothing that we put on to interface with the world.
Yeah, so I thought we'd start with a little neuroscience, a little social neuroscience, because then it sets the stage for why do we need a persona in the first place.
Sounds good to me.
So what we know from current work in neuroscience is that the mind, through its interaction with the brain, or through, let's say, processing sensory information in the brain, it creates this illusion that we live in the present moment. Right? It gives us like a stage to walk onto and to feel like, oh, I'm living right now in this present moment. I have memories. I have hopes for the future. But the present moment becomes our central stage for acting, right? In the moment. Number two, we live in and are localized in our head.
Or we perceive ourselves to...
Yes. Now, it's an illusion because that's not really what's happening, but we feel ourselves, let's say, in the ordinary sense of perception and the way we experience the world, we feel ourselves to be located inside our brain, in our head, kind of right behind the eyes, looking outward.
Like we don't think of ourselves in our hand or our foot, or even when we have a stomach ache, we feel like that stomach is like a separate entity from us sometimes after we have some interesting food. But it's the brain, like we feel like everything is here.
Yes, everything is happening in our brain. Like we point to our head, right, when we say...
or I'm stressed. I'm stressed. And when I would ask people where they feel an emotion, a lot of times they would say their head, because they weren't so disconnected from the rest of their body. Right.
The third element is that we have free will or autonomy. Now that's an illusion in the sense that we're not taking conditioning into consideration.
So we have free will, and but we're conditioned, so we don't.
No. What I'm saying is that the current neuroscience teaches us that there is no such thing as free will. Not for the ordinary person, because everything you're acting out, every action that you're taking, is essentially a reaction to past conditioning.
So let me correct. I meant to say, we have the potential for free will,
yes,
but the conditioning prevents us from having that.
That's right.
Okay.
So the perception of free will, let's say the feeling that we have free will, that
we're making choices,
that we're free to choose, yes, is an illusion.
Okay.
The fourth one is that there is a consistent self. But in this case, I mean, this is the language of neuroscience, but in this case, what they mean is that there's this I, this sense of I in our brain, mind, that is consistent. In other words, when we wake up in the morning, it's the same you that you experienced the day before and the day before, and back into the beginning of your life. That is an illusion. Anyone who has studied Buddhism or Vedanta can relate to that idea, that there is no true or no I, no ego to speak of, right? If we dissect the brain, We don't find an I in there. We don't find a center that says, this is the I. It is a perceptual illusion that the brain creates for us.
And so what does this have to do with the persona?
This takes us right into the persona, because that means that I needs a narrative. It needs a story. So every one of you listening has a narrative, right? It's a life story. It's a drama that defines what you've been through.
Your memoir.